Hey listener, welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're going way back today, all the way back to the dawn of civilization. With Genesis 10, you know it as the Table of Nations. We're going to unpack this chapter and see if its ancient wisdom has anything to say to us in the modern world.
Oh, yeah. I'm looking forward to this one. Genesis 10, it's not just some genealogy. It's a powerful story that shows us the origins and the spread of humanity after the flood.
It really is. Like it lays out the family line of Noah's sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth,
Hmm.
and how their descendants went out and populated all these different regions, forming their own distinct nations and cultures. It's like the ultimate family tree, going all the way back to the beginning.
And what I think is so fascinating is how Genesis 10 gives us specifics about these descendants.
Hmm.
Like their names, where they were, and even some of their practices. Like it says that the descendants of Ham, they settled in places like Egypt and Canaan, which laid the foundation for those civilizations. And the descendants of Japheth, they spread out across Europe and Asia, creating tons of different cultures and languages.
So are you saying we can trace, like, some of those well-known cultures in the world back to this one chapter in Genesis? I mean, it's mind-blowing to think about, like, civilizations as different as the Egyptians or the Greeks, even the early Indo-European cultures, that they're all connected in this ancient text.
It really makes you rethink what you thought you knew about cultural boundaries.
Right.
Like even groups that seem so different today, they might share a common ancestor. It highlights how interconnected human history really is.
That's so true. And the chapter doesn't just talk about geography, Genesis 10.5. It specifically mentions that different languages came about. It's like we get a glimpse into the very beginning of how language diversified.
Yeah.
It's incredible to think about how language, like one of the most important parts of culture,
Mm.
how it's starting to evolve and change, even way back then.
Yeah. And, the Table of Nations isn't just some historical document. It shows us some deeper truths about human nature. Like you see this drive in people to expand, to settle down, to build communities. It shows how what we do as individuals becomes part of a bigger story, and it shapes the future for everyone who comes after us.
It really does make you think about your own place in your community
Right.
and what you'll leave behind. What impact do we want to have? What kind of world are we trying to make?
Big questions. It's a profound question. And Genesis 10 reminds us that even the little things, even seemingly small actions, they can have a huge impact and change the course of history.
Mm.
That brings us to, I think, one of the most important points that Genesis 10 makes, the importance of unity and diversity. This chapter really shows us how humanity came from one source, but then developed like all these different cultures, languages, traditions.
Yeah, it's like that saying, variety is the spice of life. It seems like Genesis 10 is saying our differences, they actually make life richer instead of dividing us.
Exactly. It's encouraging us to go beyond just tolerating each other and to really appreciate the different perspectives and contributions that come from all these cultures. It's about recognizing that everyone has inherent dignity and value, no matter where they come from or what they believe.
That's a really powerful message, especially these days when there's so much division and conflict all around us. It makes you wonder how we can use this wisdom from Genesis 10 to create more understanding and cooperation, like in our own communities and beyond.
Well, one way is to be more curious and open-minded. Instead of seeing cultural differences as a threat, we can see them as opportunities to learn and grow. Imagine what would happen if we actually looked for chances to connect with people from different backgrounds, to hear their stories and learn from their experiences.
Yeah, it's like we should be building bridges instead of walls. Bridges of understanding and empathy and recognizing that we're all human.
Exactly. And building on that idea of community, Genesis 10 reminds us that it's important to work together. Just like the descendants of Noah, they worked together to build cities and societies. We also thrive when we contribute to the well-being of our communities.
It's a good reminder that we're not just individuals. We're all part of a bigger picture. And what we do, even if it seems small, can affect those around us.
Right. And it goes back to the idea of legacy that we talked about before. Genesis 10 makes us think about the world we're leaving behind for the next generation, or like, are we building a world where diversity is celebrated, where everyone has a chance to flourish?
It's a challenge to live intentionally, to make choices that help make the world a better place. And it starts with recognizing that everyone has worth and dignity, just like Genesis 10 shows us so clearly.
And speaking of respecting individual worth, Genesis 10 also highlights the importance of respecting cultural identity.
Hmm.
As these different nations developed, they created their own customs, languages, traditions.
Right. It reminds us that cultural identity is really important. It's a part of who we are. And that diversity of expression is something to be valued, not feared.
Absolutely. Respecting cultural identity means supporting the rights of all people to practice their traditions and express their beliefs freely, as long as they don't hurt others. It's about making a world where different communities can live together peacefully and learn from each other.
So it's not just about tolerance. It's about genuinely respecting and appreciating all the different cultures that make up our world.
Exactly. And if we look at the bigger picture, it makes you ask, knowing that we all come from the same ancestors, even if it's way back. How can we use that understanding to create a more inclusive world? How can we actually live out the wisdom from Genesis 10?
That's a good question. It really is. It makes you think outside of your own little bubble
Yeah.
and consider what your role is in the bigger human story.
Yeah, it really does make you stop and think. Like, how can I make a difference? How can I help build a world where diversity isn't just tolerated but celebrated?
It's a great challenge, and it takes all of us working together.
Mm-hmm.
We can start by making a choice, to learn about other cultures, to challenge our own biases, to really engage with different perspectives.
Oh, definitely. It's about actively seeking out those opportunities to connect with people who are different from us. It's about expanding our understanding of the world, getting out of our comfort zones, and embracing all the richness that diversity brings. And those ripples we were talking about. Imagine the good that we can do if we all commit to spreading understanding and compassion wherever we are, like in our families, at work, in our communities, even just small acts of kindness and empathy in our everyday lives.
I love that
Yeah.
because it's true. Like those small gestures, they really can add up over time. And when we all do our part, those ripples become waves of change for the better.
Exactly. And as we wrap up our deep dive into Genesis 10, I think what's important to take away is this. This ancient text, it has something to teach us. It has timeless wisdom that goes beyond any culture or time period. It reminds us that we're all part of the same human family. We're all connected by our shared ancestry, and we're all united by our common humanity.
It's a beautiful message. And it's one that we should hold on to as we try to navigate this world that's becoming more complex, more connected every day.
So, listener, as you go about your day, your week, your year, remember what we talked about today in Genesis 10? Celebrate diversity, embrace understanding, and try to leave a legacy of compassion and unity for everyone who comes after you.
That's a great way to put it. Thanks for being with us on this deep dive into Genesis 10. We hope it's given you a new perspective on the world and your place in it.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep